Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly news recap for August 25th to 31st, 2025. So let's get into it. So this week, or this weekend rather, PAX is currently ongoing. And as part of PAX, we have the Mix Fall Game Showcase. The Mix is the something indie exchange. I'm not sure what the M stands for. Anyway, like 58 games were shown. A lot of them kind of previously known. They're just kind of updates or it's coming to early access or something like that. But there are a handful of games I wanted to point out. So this is Silly Cross Poly Beast. I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to pronounce this this title. But this is it's kind of a mix of a couple of different games. So it's a little bit, as you can see from the skateboard on the back, there's a little bit of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater in here. And it's also, I think, like a twin stick shooter in some ways. It's going to skip to some gameplay bits. So it's got a little bit of like almost a survival horror kind of twin stick top down thing going for it. But there are like over the shoulder segments here, like where you're skating and what have you. It's also got a pretty strong Suda51 vibe to it. He's not attached in any way, but I'm getting a lot of vibes from that particular developer. Story-wise, not entirely sure. I think it's just traumatic experience. You're brought into your nightmares. Silent Hill 3, basically. Coming soon, by the looks of things. No specific release date, but it is wishlistable. And we had Escape from Duckov, which is Escape from Tarkov, but you're a duck. That's it. Friends vs. Friends, I think, is already on PC, and it is effectively like a PvP thing, but it's like kind of slapstick in some ways. And its console release, I think, is going to be pretty soon. Cosmic Race Galactic Showdown is, I think it's just like a pretty standard racing game with power-ups, so like Mario Kart kind of thing. But the power-ups are all like kind of guns and missiles and that kind of thing. Rhythm Animal Cafe, I kind of wanted to point this one out because it reminds me a lot of the game Melatonin. And Melatonin, as the game might suggest, is about trying to sleep with rhythm games. You get into a rhythm and it gets you into like a zone state or Zen state, and you can, zone out and kind of go to sleep or what have you. I don't think that's the plan for this kind of game, but it is a very similar type of game. Couple of different stages, couple of different characters, couple of different scenarios and what have you, and it's all done to a beat. Melatonin was fun, if not also very fucking hard. If you wanted to play it like on hard mode. Like, it lives up to its name because it's hard. Anyway, Rhythm Animal Cafe, I don't think it has a release date. I think it's just wishlist. There's a demo. Oh, I didn't know there was a demo. I'm going to check that out. Yeah, we didn't even get a release date on that one. Hank Drowning on Dry Land is a really strange title, and I'm not sure if this is based on a property or something. Anyway, it is got like a comic book vibe to it. It is billing itself as a comic book come to life. You're playing Hank. Hank has some kind of time rewinding ability, and Hank is also drunk. So you're dealing with, I think, a hangover at the same time as while you're playing the game. And that's probably, I don't know, it's maybe to like limit your powers. Like while you're drunk, you can only go so far back in time or something like that. I don't know. But at the same time, you will encounter yourself time traveling. So you do have a little bit of like a co-op element as well. So having to think ahead, what am I going to get this guy to do? And then when I time travel back, he's going to keep doing that thing while I do something else. And have these kind of layers of Hanks all doing things all at once. And it's not clear how many you can have on the go at once. But it's quite clearly going for a very silly tone, even if I think the vibe of the game is that this guy is trying to kill you or something. There's lots of different ways you can die. One of them being a paradox. You can run into yourself, or I think if you do something in one timeline that causes you to die in the next timeline or something like that, I think that's what gets you killed. But it looks pretty trippy. It looks pretty interesting. Did it have a release date, or is it just a wish listy thing? I think it's just wish list. think he's being attacked by many of himselves in this. Anyway. Rebounder looks a bit insane, and I'm almost certainly not going to play this game just because of the kind of game it is. But it does seem like somebody set out to make like a Mario Kaizo game, effectively. If you're not familiar, just look them up. They're just really, really hard Mario games. The idea with Rebounder is you have these kind of bomb-like things that you can throw them into surfaces. They bounce back at you, and if they hit you, they explode. And when they explode, you get like a boost to your jump. So you get some really intricate platforming stuff going on. I'll see if I can find, like, here's one here, which is a bit insane. You know, you're having to think ahead of when you throw it, which one you pick up, and stuff like that. So there's definitely I can't wait to see someone who's actually good at the game do this kind of stuff. Anyway, there's one like later on at the end of the trailer. I'm not going to get it. Is it this one? It might be this one. You know, where he's carrying like dolls and stuff like it. That's nuts. That's so much trial and error. I will definitely not have the patience for it, but you might. You can check it out. Bandit Trap, I think, is like a PvP thing, but there's some sort of asymmetric thing to it in that one of you is setting traps in the house and the others are trying to steal things from the house. So it's a bit like Home Alone. Flickshot Rogues, I think we've seen before, but it is like a turn-based thing, but all of the combat is done by like flicking your character into other enemies and stuff like that. Origament, maybe. Paper Adventures, it's kind of adventure game where you can kind of turn your character into different origami things. Liminal Skies, I'm not entirely sure what kind of game this is. I think it's like a village management thing. Desolus looked kind of interesting. I should have highlighted that one. So Desolus, I think it's going to be a type of puzzle game where you're shifting between either two realms or maybe multiple realms. It's not sure. So think like Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, or maybe more recently the Lords of the Fallen game, where you could swap between the dead world and the living world and stuff like that. I think that's what they're going for. But again, there's no... it's not clear what exactly the gameplay is. Is it a walking sim or is it a puzzle game? Is it just a very like pretty looking game? I don't know, but that's not exactly. That's probably why I didn't highlight it. It's like, I don't know what kind of game this is. Ukulele's got a release date, 2nd of October, I think. And there's going to be a digital version. It's like €30, £30, something like that. And then the physical release, because it's going to be a limited thing, I think it's a little bit more expensive. I don't remember the exact number. Rue Valley we saw a little bit more of. This is an isometric adventure game that I think has a bit of a Groundhog Day element to it. Cosmic Holidays looks kind of fun. It reminds me a little bit of Machinarium, but it's not that kind of game. It's definitely more of like a platformer type thing, whereas Machinarium was more of a point and click. I'm just kind of basing that on just the kind of painted world, even though Machinarium was really more of like a sketchwork thing. Anyway, the idea is you're on holidays, marooned, I think. I'm not sure you're supposed to be on holidays here. Anyway, this character can inflate his head, and that's kind of where a lot of the game's platforming elements come from. It's kind of basic platforming here, but later on you can see things like, you know, he can glide by inflating his head. He can explode as a balloon, I think, later on. Yeah, this is kind of more gliding stuff, but later on he uses his head to kind of climb a wall, like a kind of really narrow passageway, and he like jumps, inflates his head to stick himself there, and then uninflates, jumps again, inflates to stick himself up, so he just gradually climbs up like that. You can use your inflated head to protect you from falling debris. Oh shit, there it is there. Oh no, that's a different one. That's where he uses it to push over a rock. I think there's a later one. I'm probably going to end up skipping it. Probably skipped it. Yeah, I've skipped it. Anyway, there's that one I was talking about. Anyway, it looks interesting. Rat Scum, despite the name, the art direction, the art style here is really, really nice. It's like a kind of old school cartoon. you got this cute little rat guy who seems like your ability is just like smelling, and it gives you a sort of Hitman or Batman detective vision kind of thing to show you interactable objects, or like at some point he seems to stop time with it. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be what's happening, but that's what looks like happens. He's getting chased by something here. He uses his senses to find this gap in the wall. I think it's here. Yeah, it's here. It's like he just sniffs and the clock stops. Like, again, not sure if that's an actual power or if this is just for the trailer or something. I don't know. Again, it's not entirely clear what kind of game it is. It does look like it's a sort of platformer adventure thing. But it's very cute. So it's got that going for it. Moomin Troll, Winter's Warmth is another Moomin thing. So like the Snufkin Valley game from 2 years ago, something like that. So it's the same developer, same IP. Gold River Project, I think it's just a farming sim thing. One Way Home we've seen before. It's a pretty trippy survival horror thing. It's frustrating there's no trailer here. Bad Cheese is because Steamboat Willie is now in the public domain. They're just doing a horror Mickey Mouse, effectively. Midnight Horde is Vampire Survivors, but you can also build a castle at the same time. Broken Lore Unfollow is another... You've almost seen this game hundreds of times. There's a stalker in an apartment thing, and you're being chased by them. Basalt the Cursed Vein is a match 3 horror game. So there's like gems, and you're mining them. I guess that that makes sense. But there's also some shenanigans going on in the mine. Shadows of Chroma Tower we've seen before. It's like a first-person melee roguelike thing where you're climbing a chromatic tower. Caput Mortem, I always forget. Every time I see this game, I forget what game it is. I didn't highlight it anyway. Dreadout 3, despite being a new game, I didn't bother highlighting it because when I saw the trailer, I just thought it was Dreadout 1 again. Like, it doesn't seem like it's improved in any way. And I was looking at this logo for ages, thinking... I wasn't looking at this part of the logo. I was looking at this part of the logo. I was looking at it for ages, just going, wait, are they re-releasing Dreadout or something? And I just did not cop at all that there's a 3 here. I don't know. It must have been very late or something. They're doing the Fear 3 thing again. Fear. Pizza Kid has a really cool art style, and it looks like it's going to be a kind of side-scrolling brawler thing. So like Streets of Rage, Double Dragon, something like that. So it's got a kind of pixelized effect to it, so giving it a sort of like arcade vibe, like really old arcade. Now, whether it actually plays out that well, we'll see. This pointed out in the trailer, there are accolades for like, best fighting game and stuff like that at recent expos. So maybe it's got some juice, as it were. As a Kickstarter of it starting pretty soon, if it hasn't already started. Mexican Ninja, I'm not highlighting it, even though it seemed somewhat interesting. I just wasn't wowed by a lot of the kind of enemy animations and stuff like that. It just seemed a bit rough. Echo Defy Death is a cool concept, and it reminds me of a Samurai Jack episode. Even though this didn't happen in the Samurai Jack episode, but it kind of reminds me of it. I'm thinking of like when he fights like the black ninja, and he like they have like the black and white fight, and they're like fighting in shadows and fighting in light and stuff like that. Anyway, it's not that. This is more of your character is blind, or blinded rather. At the start of the game, they lose their eyes, and somehow that doesn't kill them. Anyway, so you're using your attacks cause like sonar, and you can like see enemies that way. So it's a little bit of like a Daredevil thing. It's an interesting concept, and I'm curious to see how far they go with it. Like this kind of thing of the archers, you'll only see them when they actually take a shot kind of thing. That's pretty cool idea. Or hitting the gong fills up the whole screen so you can see it for a brief amount of time. Heavy enemies, when they slam the ground, like it causes like a static effect on you. But you can see here from choosing things, it's a roguelike. So I'm a little burned out on roguelikes, to be honest. I do like them. Or rather, I like the concept of them. I think in practice, there's only like a couple of roguelikes I actually like. Anyway, that's Echo Defy Death. It won't be the only roguelike. Broomstick Exorcist is kind of an interesting one. So this is actually by one of the devs of the Broken Lore games. And it's very much not a Broken Lore game, which is why I was kind of interested in it. So it is monochromatic. This isn't like previs. Like the game is intended to be black and white. You're playing this character who is maybe a witch. I don't know. They have a broomstick. And it is a side-scrolling beat-em-up thing. So again, like Streets of Rage type. And your job is to like clean up the streets, but you're cleaning it up with like demons and stuff like that. And at one point, I think your broomstick turns into a scythe. So there is like some elements of supernaturalness and anime shenanigans and that kind of thing. But it's not trying to be like super scary. It's trying to go for more like a campy kind of thing. But clearly leaning into Eastern folklore and those kind of monsters. Animals. Ooh, who knows? Anyway, it's interesting. I think it's still pretty early in development, but it is intended to be black and white. Let's put that out there. Anyway, Godbreakers is an upcoming roguelike, maybe, or a MOBA thing. I'm not sure. Hexrite. It kind of seemed like it was going to be a ninja game, but I think it's more like an agile magic kind of thing. Again, seemed a bit rough. I think that needs a bit more time. Kernel Hearts is action JRPG roguelike thing where you're a robot. That's why it's Kernel. You're a robot that's also an anime girl. Don't worry about it. Gameplay seemed not all that interesting, even if the art is very nice. 9 Rounds Rapid is another roguelike. It's a top-down twin-stick shooter set on a space station that keeps rearranging itself every time you die, yada yada, get to the end of the game. Again, art direction is really nice, and its art style is really nice, but the gameplay didn't seem like much was going on there. Starfire Eternal Cycle, also a roguelike, also with great art, also with a not particularly inspiring gameplay loop. Ascent Rivals, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna skip it because I don't remember what it is. Don't Wake the Beast is a stealth roguelike where you are stealthing your way through a dungeon, trying to collect a bunch of treasure. Eventually you get to the end of it, steal the treasure from the beast at the end. In this case it's a dragon, but it's not always a dragon. And then you need to get out of the dungeon before the dragon kills you, basically. I don't know what Void Dungeon is. Maybe it's Void Bastards, but it's more of a fantasy vibe to it. I don't know. Order Automatica or Automatatica. I didn't say that word right. Anyway, it's Inscription, but auto battlers. That's basically it. I don't know what Flooded was. There's no trailer for it anyway. Outbound just kind of showed a little bit more gameplay of you crafting and stuff in your caravan thing. Captain Wayne is kind of a throwback side-scrolling shooter thing. Service with a Shotgun is both a shop management game and a zombie horde killer game. So like you're managing your shop, but you also have to kill zombies who keep invading the shop. Slain 2 is another side-scrolling beat 'em up, but it's a much slower paced one, much more deliberate. And there's been like 10 years maybe in between Slain and Slain 2. It's been a while. Umami, I don't know. Is it like it looks like a cooking game. I'm not sure what it is. Spooky Express is a puzzle game where you are kind of managing trains and train tracks, and why you're a vampire, I don't know, but that's what it is. Below the Crown is chess, but a bit like not chess, essentially. Okay. Sushi Cat Tower Defense is exactly what it sounds like. You're a cat in the middle of the board. You need to defend the cat from invading monsters and what have you. Slumber Realm is a dice roguelike where you're spending, I think, the day as a regular high school student, and then nighttime, your nightmares of being a high school student effectively come to life, and you fight them with dice. I don't remember Relic Guardian. 58 games, remember? I'm not going to remember all of them. Dog Witch is a card battler, deck builder kind of thing. Angry Video Game Nerd 8-bit, I think it's just a re-release of the Angry Video Game Nerd game. Wolfhound is Castlevania, but Wolfenstein. So it's a side-scrolling pixel art thing in the kind of old school Castlevania vibe, but it's Wolfenstein, basically. Nocturnal 2 looks interesting, and I suspect it is also a roguelike, but they don't necessarily tell you that. So it's a side-scrolling Metroidvania, explore 'em up, I think. Again, not entirely sure. It's definitely a side-scrolling platform thing with a lot of interesting traversal mechanics and stuff like that. And the main gist of the game is you're, I think, trying to reignite the engines of this town and like wake everybody up because they've been asleep for a very long time, and all of the industry and whatever has been asleep for a very long time. But you saw the thing there of like lose your flame and you lose all your progress. It sounds like a roguelike situation, but I think the deal is the checkpointing system is just setting things on fire, and wherever the last fire thing is where you go back to. I don't know, to be honest. And if it's a case of it's a one-hit kill or not, also not entirely clear. But yeah, there's some interesting traversal stuff there, and I like interesting traversal stuff, so that'll be one for me. Bloodbreaker, Labyrinth of the Witch is an anime Castlevania. Echo Weaver we've seen before. It's kind of Groundhog Day. I mean, I guess it's technically a roguelike in some ways, but you effectively have like a minute or something like that. You have a limited amount of time, anyway, to escape this area that you're in. And as you're playing it, you're kind of learning like where you're supposed to go. Metroidvania, I think, is another way to put this. So those kind of like what you're supposed to do at certain intervals, so you can progress to an area where you can create a checkpoint. And so when the time comes up, when your run timer runs out, we'll say you go to the new checkpoint instead. It's kind of like Minute. This has a similar concept. Blood Thief, which there's no trailer for, and I guess they don't assume there will be because there's no coming soon. Blood Thief is like, it's kind of like a speed running Kingsfield. It's like a first person melee thing, medieval vibe to it, but it's extremely fast. Like it's meant to be like a speed running thing. And then Fallen Fates we've seen before. It's from the people behind Astria Ascending, I think, or Astral Ascent, maybe one of those. And I think they have a Kickstarter now. I think the last time we looked at it, there was going to be a Kickstarter, and I think there is one now. Anyway, that was the mix. Obviously, a lot of games there. 58 games, and there weren't 58 games in that list, so there's a lot. Anyway, check that out yourselves if you're interested. Elsewhere, there's also news. So last week, we learned that Silksong is coming out very, very soon. And at the same time, a bunch of indie developers also learned that Silksong was coming out very soon. Coming out kind of when they had planned to release their game. So a lot of games have now been delayed because of Silksong, or games have been Silksonged, as the community has been saying. So after years and years of waiting for Silksong, it was kind of dropped that, yeah, it's going to be out like next week. Pretty exciting for fans. Going to be a problem for a lot of indie studios, so games are being delayed to avoid it. So devs and publishers have started announcing delays to get out of Silksong's way. So we have Demon School. I was quite looking forward to. It's like a tactics RPG. It's kind of like a slice of life Persona thing, but like more Western based. And that was supposed to be out in like 2 weeks, I think. That's been pushed out to November. Eterna Lucis, I'm not familiar with, but that's been delayed out till next year at some stage. Wondering if it's going to bump up against Grand Theft Auto as well. Little Witch in the Woods, also a game I've actually been looking forward to for a while. It's got a little bit of a Stardew Valley vibe, but it's like a witch, and it's kind of got a spooky but also somewhat wholesome vibe to it. I did like their update though. Their update on telling people that they delayed it by a week. Like, it's not by much, but they have this art of the main character, you know, the Peppy meme, of having their stuff knocked out of their hands by Hornet in the silhouette. I thought it's very funny. It's very charming. It's mean, but you know, it's kind of funny. And then their thing there is basically just saying, yeah, lol, Silksong. Clover Pit, I think, is kind of like Balatro, but it's a slot machine instead. Mega Bonk is a 3D Vampire Survivors. Baby Steps, you've probably seen a good bit now. It's a literal walking simulator, as they put it. They also similarly had a kind of funny update. So we have our main character here trying to walk around Hornet. So as you can see, he's not doing a very good job. And I think he just eats shit here at some point. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, it's going to be out a little bit later. And then Phaland is probably a little bit more like Eternal Lucis, I think, is a Metroidvania. And Phaland also, I think, is a Metroidvania. So in any case, they would definitely want to be out of the way of Silksong because they're very similar games. The others, I think, probably would have been fine. And what is interesting is that some of these delays actually put them into like contention with each other. So like Mega Bonk and Little Witch in the Woods, very different games, but they're coming out, you know, within days of each other. Clover Pit and Baby Steps, again, also very different games, but again, coming out within a couple of days of each other now. But as pointed out here by Zach for Kotaku, some of these games I had never even heard of, and now I'm writing about them because Silksong has delayed them. So, you know, there's a little bit of publicity there, I suppose. Anyway, outside of that stuff, other games that are not being delayed because it's going to be a very long time before we see them. Onimusha Way of the Sword. So this is the demo that was playable if you were at Gamescom. I was not at Gamescom, as I imagine many of you were not. So this is Capcom kind of showing off, hey, this is what people got to play, and you know, you can have a look at it too. It looks really good. I'm actually dying to play this game now. I was dying to play it anyway, but now I really am. I'm gonna skip ahead to the boss fight, I think. So there's a boss fight with another human character, which is kind of interesting because I think there's only one kind of human-like character you fight in the Onimusha series, and they're not human. Otherwise, they're usually like just big monster things. What is interesting though is you'll notice in the boss fight that you don't do a ton of damage to his health bar, but you do quite a bit of damage to their stature bar, which isn't really a thing in Onimusha. This is clearly coming from Soulsy type games, Sekiro in some ways. If you watch previously in the video, parrying is a big focus, and parrying was a big focus in Onimusha as well, but you could get by without doing it. Whereas it does seem like it's pretty much a requirement now. But from what I have read in other previews, the parrying window is very generous. What's also being shown off here, I'm going to pause it for a second. So you've parry broke this guy, stature broke the boss, and you can choose what to then target. So I think in the demo they choose their head, which just does a shit ton of damage. But you can also choose to attack their arms or their legs and stuff like that, and it will do different things. Like, I think if you attack his legs, he's not as mobile for the next section, and if you attack his arm, he doesn't hit as hard anymore or something like that. But I'm pretty sure everyone is just going to go for the head every time. But I do think it's interesting. I do think it's an interesting idea, and, you know, see what happens with more of the game. But this is a very Sekiro thing of, you know, break the guy's posture, deliver a devastating blow, and then he changes gameplay type, changes his weapon or changes his moveset and stuff like that. That's very Sekiro, and not very Onimusha. Although, to keep in mind, Onimusha is a very old game, so It doesn't have any of these kind of new things we've seen. Anyway, that's a lengthy enough video. Although speaking of games that have also been delayed, so this one not delayed because of Silksong. This was this never really had a release date. So this is replaced. We've seen it a couple of times now. This is the kind of really cool looking like cyberpunk side scroller action game. Had some really interesting combat mechanics, but probably the most interesting thing was like the camera work. It's a very niche thing to look at and be wowed by, but I am like super wowed by what he does with the camera and a lot of these things. So this is a progress update. They're just showing off a couple of things, but the thing at the end of it was, hey, yeah, it's getting delayed to next year. So this is like nearly 2 years, I think it's been delayed now. So like I think it was meant to come out at the end of 2024, and then it was delayed into 2025, and now it's being delayed into 2026. So that's a bit concerning. But also, like, how long did Silksong take to come out? And I guess we'll see if it hopefully Silksong lives up to its hype. I suspect it won't. Like, I don't think it will. Like, I think it's going to be a very good game. There's a lot of hype being built on the thing at this point. But anyway, yeah, this is being delayed out till 2026 at some point. We don't know when. But I do think it's dropped Xbox One support, because it was going to be Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC, but I think it's just Xbox One and PC now. Anyway, so we're coming to the start of a new month, so the PlayStation Plus monthly games be coming out soon. So this month we have Psychonauts 2, Stardew Valley. If you somehow have not played Stardew Valley yet, or somehow don't own Stardew Valley, now you can get it, I guess. And Viewfinder, which is a really interesting puzzle game where you take pictures of things and then use the pictures to overlay them on the environment, and you get like a forced perspective shift thing. It's pretty cool. And Psychonauts 2 is a very fun platformer game. And I think that's it. I don't think there's a hidden fourth game this time. No. Over on the Epic Game Store, so free games up until Thursday. Machinarium, which is speaking about Machinarium. Looking at it now, I don't know why Cosmic Hero reminded me of Machinarium, but it does. I don't know why, but it does. Anyway, you're a robot, you've been stranded outside the city, you want to get back into the city. It's a kind of old school point and click adventure thing. You click on things and hopefully things work and progress you. That's been my experience. Anyway, one issue I had with Machinarium was like, it's difficult to tell what in the environment is actually interactable and what isn't interactable. But it's a fun game. Once you get over that, it's a fun game. And then Make Way is kind of like Micro Machines in some ways. So it's a top-down racing game. And the kind of niche thing for this one, or the kind of unique selling point for it, is that you can also make the tracks as well. So it's a bit Trackmania, or top-down Trackmania, I guess. It's probably another way to look at it. Anyway, that one also free until Thursday. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Shinobi Art of Vengeance, and it is getting really good reviews. It's getting some glowing reviews. So this is a real return for Shinobi. I can't even think of when the last Shinobi game was. There was definitely one on the PS2. That was a long time ago. I'm not sure if there's been one since then. And I think the Shinobi PS2 game got a re-release on PC and had like a texture update and stuff like that. I don't think it ever got a console re-release. Anyway, it's been a long time. I've played the demo of this. Very impressed. I actually am really, really looking forward to playing the full game now. However, speaking of not getting glowing reviews, is Lost Soul Aside, which is kind of really disappointing. This game's been in development for a very long time, and it's also another big Sony published exclusively thing. So it's exclusive on PS5 and PC. So this was originally kind of a response to Final Fantasy 15, when it kind of changed tack and wasn't going to be Final Fantasy Versus anymore. and it was going to become its own thing. And then this developer put out like a kind of messing around thing of what it might look like if you had all of those abilities where you could change weapons on the fly mid combo and stuff like that. And at the time, it was super impressive because this would have been the PS3 era. Very impressive from a solo developer to pull off that kind of stuff. And then eventually Sony got involved and they were like, we'll fund you, we'll publish the game if you want to work on it and what have you. And from the sounds of things, again, there haven't been many reviews. So this could just be like a handful of reviews are kind of shitting on it. From what I've seen from the demo anyway, it does have some performance issues. And some of the reviews have been pointing out that the game's gameplay is a bit simple. Even if the game like looks nice, is very flashy, but the gameplay itself is a bit simple. And I don't really get that vibe from the trailers, but maybe when you're playing it, it's like canned animations or something like that. Anyway, I haven't played the trailer myself, I haven't played the demo myself, so I don't know. But yeah, from the sounds of things, it's a bit rough. Anyway, moving on, then we have a couple of ports and DLC things. So the Star-Crossed World DLC for Kirby in the Forgotten World. Kirby in the Forgotten Land. So this is the Switch 2 exclusive, effectively, for Kirby. So that's out this week. I have not played the original game, so I'm not entirely sure what exactly Star-Crossed World does. But apparently it warranted a full re-release for the Switch 2. And that's just Nintendo being Nintendo. Anyway, that is available now if you are so interested and are looking for something to play on your Switch 2 that you can't play everywhere else. And then in kind of what the fuck is going on, we have Gears of War on PlayStation. So the original Gears of War has had a kind of remaster, up-resed resolution. I think it's had like performance boost, 60 FPS, stuff like that. But it's on PlayStation also, which is really fucking weird. I think if you already owned it on Xbox, it's just like an update to it. I don't think you had to pay extra for it. I'm not sure. So don't quote me on that one. But I think that's the case. Anyway, so this is also like in preparation for like the next Gears of War Judgment. I don't know if they're going to re-release the other Gears of War games before then, or is Judgment like a prequel or something like that? Actually, Judgment might be a prequel. I think that's why they'll probably get away with just doing the first game. Anyway, Gears of War I never got to play, but I always heard like it was the reason to buy an Xbox, so I don't know, I guess I should check it out at some point. Anyway, but also in opposite land, we have one alien shooter making its way from Xbox to PlayStation, and then we have another alien shooter making its way from PlayStation to Xbox. So Helldivers 2 has released on Xbox as well. It has full cross-play network support, so Xbox and PlayStation fanboys can yell at each other over the comms if they want. But yeah, from the looks of things and from what I've been seeing on social media and what have you, there's been no real issues with the game. It runs fine, runs exactly as it does on PlayStation. Didn't like stealth slip in a thing where it runs a bit shit on Xbox or something like that. It's like, no, it's fine, it's great. It's Helldivers 2. If you like it on PlayStation, you'll like it on Xbox as well. And I think it also comes with some Halo ODST stuff. Again, Halo is an Xbox exclusive. I never played it. I don't have the love for it that some other people might have, but you know, you might be interested in that kind of thing. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So we have this report from Rock Paper Shotgun, from Edwin Evans Tyrrell. So this is something I talked about briefly last week in the recap section of how there was a sit-in at Microsoft's headquarters about Microsoft helping allegedly the Israeli army target people in Palestine, and Microsoft saying no, we're not, and the EU saying yes, you are. But anyway, there was a sit-in protest about that, and some of them were Microsoft employees, and those employees were later fired for doing so. It's not clear if they were part of this protest or if they were part of a different one, but I think it was this specific one here. Anyway, this article, they're kind of talking about some people who were at previous protests, similar ones to that from Microsoft, who were Microsoft employees at the time and who were similarly fired for a similar situation. So there's a little bit of background here. In October, Microsoft hosts an employee giving campaign, which is effectively like a humanitarian charity fundraising campaign thing where people can, or employees can run campaigns for their charity, and Microsoft will match any funds that they manage to raise, only not for anything related to Palestine, as we're going to find out. So a group of workers organized a vigil for Palestinians killed. This would have been last year in October. And it was in aid of organizations like the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund and so on. And they were honoring some people who had died. So it was a computer science student. There's a Washington State resident. Microsoft is based in Washington. It was a tech worker who worked with the Gaza Sky Geeks, which is like a Google thing. So all very much related to their job. So they were making that vigil. It was at around about lunchtime. About 50 people, and this was all in line with company guidance for these kind of events. So this isn't like out of the blue kind of thing. It's like these kind of things were happening in October. Like this is what they do. Only to find out that later on that evening they received an email that they had been fired, claiming that the event had disrupted work on the campus. Again, not something that happens to any of the other kind of similar events that go on. And according to Mohammed here, who was one of the people who's a machine learning guy, formerly for Microsoft, because he doesn't work for them anymore. He's basically saying that, it wasn't exactly surprising. Microsoft has built this culture of intimidation, retaliation, and oppression for anyone who felt the need to speak out about what's happening in Gaza. If Microsoft were thinking that firing these guys and making an example of them would actually stop criticism, it didn't, because we did have, as I was talking about last week, we had the No Wager for Apartheid movement occupied the campus, and then some of them were occupying the company president's offices as well, and then some of them were outside Satya Nadella's lakefront house in canoes, which is fucking ridiculous, but okay. As part of this stuff, they've pushed around a petition basically calling for Microsoft to divest from Israel. It's been signed by a bunch of, and this is why I'm talking about it, it's been signed by a bunch of game developers from Xbox subsidiaries. So Bethesda, Activision Blizzard, Mojang, and we already knew about Arcane putting out that letter from 2 weeks ago. So there's a little bit of background here about what the Gaza genocide is all about. I'm sure you know, we probably don't need to go into that background, but that's what this part is all about. The UN Human Rights Council basically saying, yeah, it's a genocide, and also there's arrest warrants for Netanyahu and nobody's enforcing them. Anyway, but among the companies highlighted on tech companies who are helping this, Microsoft, whose technologies are embedded in Israel's prison service, police, universities, schools, including in colonies. Colonies is a pretty telling word here, but it is the land they're stealing from Palestinians, allegedly, colonies. Anyway, Microsoft, for their part, said, no, we're not. Everybody else said, yes, you are. Apparently, data storage and processing done on surveillance data was being used to facilitate airstrikes. And that is the kind of chief issue that all of these protests are about. At Gamescom this year, a number of different outlets tried to interview people working for Microsoft, working for Xbox, whoever, request for comment about this shit. And every single one of them had an Xbox PR guy like, nope, cut that shit out. We're not talking about that. Which, I mean, on the one hand, sure, you're there to talk about the games, but you can't like hide from this kind of stuff. Anyway, it's also pointed out here that Microsoft take pride in their humanitarian and philanthropic campaigns. I mean, you could just pay your taxes, but okay. Anyway, Mohammed again says to say that there's long been a double standard when it comes to Palestine. There was a petition that was internally circulated for Microsoft to endorse a ceasefire or call out for a ceasefire. And I think at the time, a lot of people were starting to speak up internally using the so-called appropriate channels, which means you ask your executive head of the group or you ask in this internal forum thing. So they're going through the quote unquote correct appropriate channels, which was basically just a way for them to be appropriately dismissed. Anyway, Microsoft management were not receptive to any of these things. Things would get dismissed. Questions would get shut down. They, at one point, brought in some people to talk about the Nakba, and that event would be shut down because it was deemed too educational, which is a hell of a reason to shut down something. No, you're teaching them too much about this. We don't want them to learn the truth, I guess, from people who fucking lived it. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for this article. The rest of it goes into some things about how certain phrases are labeled as hate speech, even though they're very much not hate speech, but whatever. There's some stuff about how Microsoft is championing AI while at the same time AI is being used to airstrike people. And then there's a bunch of things here from developers outside of Microsoft who are part of the BDS campaign and stuff like that. It is a lengthy article. I do suggest you read it. I'm not going to take away all of the work that Edwin Evans Thirlwell did there. But I think the first part is kind of a bit telling of how Microsoft is trying to stick its head in the sand here. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of continuing with Microsoft, King. So this is from mobilegamer.biz. It's not an outlet I typically look into, but it was talking a lot about the Microsoft layoffs from a while ago, and in particular King. I do think it's important to keep an eye on the mobile gaming industry, even if I don't have a particular interest in the games. A lot of the stuff that is done in mobile gaming is a test ground to then do in console PC gaming. So all of the shitty microtransaction stuff that we have seen come in the last 10 years or so, season passes, buying skins, buying digital currency, one-time seasonal stuff, daily logins, things, all of that kind of stuff, login streaks, any of that kind of thing. It all came from mobile games, and in some ways browser games as well, stuff like Farmville, that kind of shit. But they are very much a testing ground for it because they can iterate quickly, and they have so many users that it's okay if there's a little bit of attrition because they'll get new people all the time. So they get away with some egregious shit in mobile gaming, and they kind of find the stuff that they can get away with and then try to get away with it in console games. And you know what? It's working. They're getting away with it. Anyway, this is more talking about the layoffs that are going on, how some of the severance is a bit suspect, the leadership who didn't lose their jobs and absolutely should have lost their jobs, the fact that the ethics team just doesn't do anything, low morale, and AI stuff. Again, it's a pretty good article. So this is talking about back in July, Todd Green, head of King, the King? Okay. Anyway, explained that 200 people were going to be losing their jobs. People were offered a severance package and an exit agreement to sign. They were given 3 weeks to sign the document. Of the people who contacted a lawyer, we all took lawyers, and they were pretty clear that the proposals weren't legal. But I decided in the end to sign simply because I fear getting even less, and I don't believe we can win against a corporation like Microsoft. So that's another chilling effect, and also a thing you can throw right at the feet of the US Supreme Court. But yeah, people are like, I've lost my job, I don't have the money to fight a legal battle, and I need to pay rent, and I need to pay my mortgage, so I'm gonna have to take the money, and they're just in a really bad situation. Anyway, when they were deciding who would get cut, who would make up the 200 people, it was claimed that King listed every employee, sorted them by salary, and then fired them from the top down. But apparently they skipped over management, I guess. Anyway, skipping over the people they trust, which I guess would be upper executive management. Anyway, That's one source claimed. We don't know if that's true, although I have read that that is done in some other places. It didn't matter that it was people who have worked there for 10 or more years, who have contributed to the success and earned promotions. Their performance didn't matter. You're costing us too much, and I don't like you, I guess. The logic for who has been chosen to be laid off has been hard to figure, honestly. This is a little bit talking about that they were picking people from teams that were very successful and very efficient, rather than picking from teams that were less of that. Like it didn't really make sense who was picking who. Some workers were rehired within weeks of being laid off, so we kind of heard about that from some other places. But this is a particularly shitty one if it's actually true. Others suspect that some colleagues were promoted shortly before the layoffs so that they would qualify as middle management and therefore be the first to be laid off, which is that's some pretty evil shit right there. It is alleged that, I'm not sure where it's stated, but it's alleged somewhere that it was management or middle management and inefficient performers or something like that was supposed to be who was being let go, but that's not who was actually being let go. Yeah, so they have a thing here, Farm Heroes Saga. This is another mobile game I'm not familiar with. But every game has an annual operation plan, which is effectively, this is how much money you should make at this point in the year kind of thing. Farm Hero Saga was doing very well, was close to hitting those targets, whereas things like Candy Crush, whatever the fuck Soda is, were not doing those things. But the Farm Hero Saga team lost the most people. The LP they forecasted, however, was not realistic anyway, so the question has to be asked, were we all set up to fail? I think in general that is the case. That these kind of expectations, maybe sales expectations from companies, a lot of it is, oh, you didn't reach our sales expectations, so no bonus. But we're going to set those expectations so high that there's no fucking way you'll ever reach it. Anyway. And then a little bit of it, this is just morale after that kind of stuff, and some of the changes that were instituted once Microsoft acquired Activision, Blizzard, and King all at the same time, which is effectively is that they killed any kind of anonymous complaints. Any kind of complaints or criticism now had to have a name attached to it. So people couldn't raise criticism anonymously anymore. Managers similarly couldn't just give feedback from the team rather than a specific person. As a manager, I was always trying to deliver feedback to the leadership team anonymously, but I was pressed on names. Now, whether they gave up the names, who knows? Hey, HR is indeed a shit show of incompetent people protecting the status quo of incompetent leaders. Often they have protected toxic leaders that have been reported to several degrees of accountable people. HR and above, again, the wrong people who were getting let go from the company. Leaders investigated more than once by the right way to play. Workplace conduct team had seen no repercussions at all. So that's, we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing. Employees that were vocal and known for being vocal have been targeted by HR on several occasions, and it's alleged that they were also targeted for layoffs as well. For the most part, individual contributors are talented and very nice. However, the toxicity comes from the leadership team. So like in general, a lot of burnout, people are on medical leave, and that Candy Crush and King in general is just not a great place to work. We talked about this previously, but like a lot of the people who worked at King were working on AI tools at the time, and it's now alleged that effectively those AI tools are going to replace them, essentially. But from what it sounds like at King is that nobody really wants to use the AI tools in the first place. So AI was being introduced by Microsoft as a mandatory a while ago. At some point it was 70 to 80% of daily usage should be AI. And now they want this year, it has to go up to 100%. Everybody has to use it. Artists, designers, developers, managers, everyone has to use AI on a daily basis, 100%. What you have to use it for, they don't say, and they never do. Any of the kind of AI booster people who are like, oh, you should be using AI to do yada, yada, yada. They never actually tell you what. What is it that AI will do better than I can do by myself? They can't answer you. Anyway, summarize my emails. My emails are like 2 lines. I really don't need them summarized. Anyway, but apparently at King, AI adoption is very low. People only use ChatGPT, and even then, not really for much stuff. King leadership in particular is skeptical about AI, but they're also super toxic. So let's go with that. I think it is funny that it's ChatGPT, and you might think that Microsoft might be annoyed that they're not using their AI. But the thing is, Microsoft have an agreement with ChatGPT. They are effectively the server that runs all ChatGPT stuff is owned by Microsoft. So they have kind of given ChatGPT like a super good discount, essentially. And in return, they effectively get to use it for free. But anyway, some good shit there in the industry. Moving on. But we're still sticking with Microsoft. Yeah, if all of the shit that happened to King didn't think that, hey, I wonder would they have had actual protection if any of them had been unionized? Well, the developers of Diablo seem to think that maybe that might be a good idea. Over 450 Diablo developers vote to unionize because passion can't protect us from job instability. So 450 Diablo developers, including game developers, artists, designers, engineers, and support staff all across the Diablo series. So that includes Diablo 4, but also the mobile game, Immortal, I think it's called. The union has also been formally recognized by Microsoft, which is surprising. And they join the 500 World of Warcraft unionized members and the 200 Overwatch union members, as well as Raven Software over at Activision. There's been a couple of other Activision ones as well. Anyway, Microsoft's recent mass layoffs were a very big factor. With every subsequent round of mass layoffs, I've witnessed the dread in my coworkers grow stronger because it feels like no amount of hard work is enough to protect us. We are ready to begin fighting for real change alongside our Diablo colleagues. Then from another union member and Diablo game designer, the day after the third round of mass layoffs, Jesus, I walked into the office, and when I tried to open the door to the cafeteria, my badge was denied. For a moment, I wondered if getting breakfast was how I'd find out I was part of that round. Luckily, there was just a technical issue, but none of us should have to live with that constant worry that we might be let go at the drop of a hat. So again, people shouldn't be wondering if they're laid off. Like, they should know, and they should arguably know well ahead of everybody else. Anyway, like, somewhat good news, but also it's coming off the back of this shit. Anyway, moving on. We're still not done. We're still not done with Microsoft, sorry. Call of Duty responds to identity crisis by not letting ugly skins carry over to Black Ops 7. So this is like not as grim as the last couple of stories, but it's still kind of pretty dumb. So the issue is Call of Duty had a carry forward policy, which was essentially skins that you bought in like previous Black Ops games, I think specifically, that those skins, if they were still supported, would still be supported in the next game. However, because of how just fucking ridiculous the skins have gotten, most of the player base are very much against the carry forward. They basically don't want Beavis and Butthead in Black Ops 7. I think that's kind of where we're going with this. So the wacky cosmetics from Black Ops 6 will no longer carry over. However, that was previously promised that they would, and they basically just changed their mind now about not that far from the launch of the game. So in a lengthy community update, Treyarch kind of laid out where they're coming from and why they've done a U-turn on this. We know there's been a lot of conversation recently about the identity of Call of Duty. Some of you have said we've drifted from what made Call of Duty unique in the first place: immersive, intense, visceral, and in many ways grounded. Was it ever that? I don't know. We go all the way back to like the PS1, PS2 days, maybe. That feedback hits home, and like nobody who worked on those is still working on it anyway. And we take it seriously. Yeah, sure you do. Anyway, so if they had kept the carry forward thing going, Black Ops 7 would immediately turn Black Ops 7 into Fortnite. It was kind of the pervading criticism. So Black Ops 7 needs to feel authentic to Call of Duty and its setting. Have they looked at the trailers? Because it doesn't fucking look like Call of Duty anyway. However, double XP tokens and gobble gums, yeah, very, very grounded there. Anyway, will still carry forward because This is great. We recognize your time and progression are important. That's why we have features like double XP and gobblegums. You know what you could do? You could make the need for double XP not exist if you really did recognize importance of time and progression. You could just make the XP more. Anyway, we need to deliver a better balance towards the immersive core Call of Duty experience, whatever that is. Paying money for skins seems to be the core Call of Duty experience. Activision did confirm that Black Ops 6 skins will, however, move over to Warzone, so they immediately undercut themselves here as well. We need to deliver a better balance towards the immersive Call of Duty experience. However, also no, because you're still going to be able to use those skins in Warzone. Pick one. They're picking both, I guess, by the sounds of things. So basically, this isn't a new criticism for Call of Duty in general with their skins. Like, it's not like Black Ops 6 was like suddenly weird skins. There have always been kind of not cohesive skins going on in Black. Now, it got kind of egregious for Black Ops 6, but it's always been a bit, you know, not military sim stuff. But why change their mind now? Likely Battlefield 6 and the recent beta where Battlefield 6 was, you know, grounded and gritty and like visceral and all the stuff they said back up here, and didn't have any of that extra shit on top of it. In fact, when the studio was asked if they would have any of these kind of weird crossover skins, they're like, no, it has to be grounded. I don't know why they're all so obsessed with it being grounded, but okay. This is what Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 was. It's notable they didn't point out Battlefield 2020, whatever it was. It's all soldiers on the ground. It's going to be like this. I don't think it needs Nicki Minaj. Let's keep it real, keep it grounded. What if Nicki Minaj is, you know, drafted in World War III? Then what? Anyway, yeah, there's a kind of throw out here for them talking about groundedness and whatever. Last week's reveal of a very wild looking and not at all grounded Black Ops 7 is like, yeah, look at that trailer. Like, they're talking about it needing to be grounded and it's not even remotely. All right, anyway. All right, we're moving away from Microsoft now, and we're going to move over to Steam and Valve instead. So Valve now require UK Steam users to verify their ages with a credit card thanks to the Online Safety Act. So I've talked a little bit about the Online Safety Act. It's implemented in UK, and while I don't live in the UK, UK and Ireland tend to be lumped into the same bracket because people are ignorant of geography and political states and so on. But the other reason is that the EU is also planning something similar to this. So seeing the kind of shit show that the UK one has been, it's making me very, very worried for the EU one. Anyway, in case you ever wanted to play the Dark Souls of butt slapping, you're going to now need a valid credit card to confirm that you are 18 plus if you live in the UK. So a requirement for all UK-based users to verify their ages, thanks to the UK's Online Safety Act. So basically from Valve, they've point out this kind of, how is the Online Safety Act going to work on Steam? Basically, they're saying that every account now needs to have a credit card attached to it. In the UK, an individual must be at least 18 years of age to obtain a credit card. So it basically follows that if you have a credit card and the credit card is valid and it's attached to your account, you are at least 18 years old. Okay, sure. Here's the problem. A substantial number of adults in the UK don't own credit cards. They have debit cards, probably. A lot of people using like peer-to-peer payment things like Revolut or Venmo for our US viewers. They don't have credit cards. And not only that, being 18 years of age is not the only requirement for a credit card. You need to also be able to prove you can pay back the credit card. You need to have like a full-time job and not have any dependents and or whatever the kind of requirements are for getting. I think I'm talking more about mortgages now, but for a credit card, it's not just be 18 years old. You know, it's not 2007 anymore where they just give away, where the banking industry just doesn't give a shit. I mean, it still doesn't give a shit, but it has to pretend it doesn't give a shit anymore. Not many people are going to have credit cards. So they're either going to have to go out of their way to now attach themselves to a debt-generating machine, a debt-generating piece of plastic, just to look at games on Steam. Now, it is mature games, allegedly, that this only affects, but we've already seen how many other types of games, many other types of content have accidentally been caught up in this kind of purge of not safe for work stuff. We've seen like LGBTQ stuff being caught up under it, mental health stuff being caught up under it. This is a bad look, basically, and having a credit card, requiring the credit card in the first place, and now having that attached to your Steam account also has the issue of, what if it gets hacked? Now, direct access to my credit card. Now, while I don't think Steam itself has ever been hacked, other platforms, PlayStation, where your credit card would be attached to your account, have been hacked, and those credit cards have been stolen. Many people are a bit reluctant to attach a credit card directly to Steam just for that problem, or people who have problem spending issues. Maybe they don't want a credit card attached to it. Maybe they'd rather have vouchers, prepaid cards, that kind of thing. You're now preventing them from accessing completely legal material. They are an adult. They should be allowed to access it. Now, allegedly, debit cards are okay. They appear to be acceptable for now. The problem with debit cards is you don't need to be 18 to get a debit card. You just need to have a current account. And student current accounts exist, and they are for under 18s as well. When they say student, they don't necessarily mean university student. Now, I don't know if they come with debit cards, but I think they do. So that could be a problem. Certainly for a lot of UK young adults anyway. They would only typically have a debit card or no card, but it'd be very rare for them to have a credit card. Older adults probably not paying, or probably not on Steam. I'm talking like 60 plus, like it's probably not going to be an issue for them, but we're like younger than that. Maybe some of them will have credit cards. Vast majority will have maybe debit cards or just Apple Pay, Google Pay. And maybe there's a card attached to that, but there could also just be a current account attached to it. Like, I obfuscate my details, like I go through payment services, PayPal, that kind of thing. And while PayPal, connects back to a current account, PlayStation has no visibility of my card details. Steam has no visibility of my card details, all of that kind of stuff. So if it's brought in the EU, similar issue. And if they use this kind of thinking, because this is coming directly from Ofcom, which is the regulator for online stuff in the UK, saying that the credit card is the thing. You're basically attaching a whole slew of people to debt generating plastic card for no reason. This is completely unnecessary. Massive overreach of the government. And I'm just kind of hoping that it goes so egregiously badly for the UK that the EU just goes, yeah, we don't want any of that shit. But I suspect that's not what's going to happen. Anyway, moving on. Last thing. It's kind of a weird one. Atari, apparently not dead. Rumors of my demise have been exaggerated, I guess. Although I think this is like they bought the name, like a completely new company. Anyway, have acquired 5 Ubisoft games. Kind of random selection of games here. So they're going with Cold Fear from 2005's fucking ancient survival horror game. Child of Eden, which is a Res type, Tetris Effect type. It's not Tetris, but it's like a rhythm rail shooter. It's closer to Res, really. I Am Alive is a kind of survival game before survival games were really a thing. Or survival games were really just getting going, really. It's also an extremely brown game. And then Grow Home and Grow Up. And these being split is kind of dumb because they're the same IP. The idea with Grow Up is you grow this big vine and it becomes a ridiculous climbing thing, and it's very much like it's kind of games that were popular for a very short amount of time, like Only Up, those kind of climbing things. Anyway, the kind of more interesting thing here is that Atari plans to re-release these titles under their publishing label and explore opportunities to expand their reach through updated formats, new content, and extended distribution channels. I don't know what this last one means. But obviously updated formats is getting it on Switch, getting it on PlayStation 5, getting it on whatever. New content, maybe new games. Can't imagine they'll do DLC for these ancient games, but you know, they might see like Child of Eden 2. Cold Fear is a weird pull. Cold Fear is a survival horror game from the PS2 era, 2005. It's not good. it's not good. Child of Eden, rhythm-based rail shooters, a screenshot of it there. It's decent. Rez is the better game, but it's decent. I Am Alive. Some people think this is like underrated, like actually pretty decent game. I thought it was a bit pants, to be honest. So not only is it kind of ugly, but it's also like got the Xbox 360, PS3 era of everything just being various shades of brown. But what's kind of interesting about it is that, or not interesting, the opposite, shit about it, boring, I suppose. It has a stamina system, and when you are getting low on stamina, it goes from shades of brown to shades of grey. The game is just hideous, honestly. Anyway, this is from Ubisoft's Vice President of New Business. Millions of players have experienced these worlds over the years, and this will open the door for long-time players to revisit those memories while inviting new audiences to discover them for the first time. You know, you've had these things sitting in your library, one of them since 2005. If you really thought it was worth it, you would have returned to them by now, but I guess they couldn't think of a way to make Cold Fear an open world map porn game. They couldn't think of a way to make Child of Eden a Far Cry type. Anyway, moving on. Okay, last couple of things. So there's a new mod for Minecraft that basically just turns it into Portal, and it's kind of insane. This is a trailer for it. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. So technically this isn't a mod. You know, like massive asterisk here. It's technically just using like texture packs to make things look like Portal, but it definitely has like bespoke other mods to make these things kind of work. So it's like, it will technically work with just the texture pack, but if you want it to have like a real Portal experience, you're gonna need additional mods to make it work. And I do think it's important to point out here, like when he goes through the portals, like you can see there's a noticeable hitch from when it spawned and when they go through and so on. And yeah, this is fucking Minecraft. It wasn't supposed to run Portal. But it's also pointing out just how kind of shit Java is in general as a video game platform. Anyway, it's insane that they've effectively just done Portal 2 in Minecraft. Now, it's not going to have like the story of Portal 2 or whatever, but it will have the cake, as you saw there at the end. But I think it has all of the like the levels effectively of Portal 2. So Portal 2 in Minecraft, pushing Java, the Java version of Minecraft to its limits, chugging on even, very good PCs. Like I would imagine this is probably making it absolutely pushing it to its limits. Took about 5 years to complete. There is a level editor we saw there at the end, so you can make your own levels if you want. You will need the Java edition of Minecraft to run it on PC, as well as there are a bunch of other mods that are optional, as I was talking about. But that's pretty cool. And what's less cool is Final Fantasy XIV boss explains why one of the game's most popular mods was banned, and it's because you guys can't be trusted. This is why we can't. This is another entry in the "this is why we can't have nice things." So for a long time, Final Fantasy XIV has had a "don't ask, don't tell" policy towards mods, which is basically just don't fuck with the game, and we'll leave you alone. And unfortunately, you fucked with the game, so now we can't leave you alone. Square Enix has mostly been content to look the other way as long as you didn't interfere with the overall health or integrity of the game. So one mod, Mare Synchronous, was taken down by its creator after receiving a letter from Square Enix lawyers. This was like last week, maybe the week before. While many people found this was a surprise, other players were like, yeah, this was going to happen eventually because you're idiots. Anyway, so the idea with the Mare Synchronous mod, so there is a big like fashion game on Final Fantasy 14, glamours and stuff like that, and people do mod in other like clothes and stuff like that to get the exact look they want. Or they'll mod in animations from other games so that they can do like role playing, actual role playing, not sex role playing. And there's like a pretty big role playing community in Final Fantasy 14. And the issue that Mare Synchronous fixes is that any mods you have installed for new clothes or different animations or stuff like that, other people couldn't see them. You know, they just see like stock Final Fantasy 14 stuff, or in some cases like squares and shit like that. And Mare Synchronous was basically synchronizing mods between people and across servers and stuff like that, so that if you both had it installed and you synced up, you could see their mods and they could see your mods. So they would see you the way you see yourself in your own game, kind of thing, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool idea. The problem was people were taking the piss. So it gives players complete control over how they looked in the game. It was great for role-playing. However, players reportedly used it to access items from the paid shop for free, or render not safe for work versions of their avatar, and then share them on social media. Cool, good job. Good fucking job, you idiots. So yeah, while you could change the clothes you could wear, you could also change the fact that you're wearing clothes. Anyway, and again, if that had been restricted to just your game, Square Enix wouldn't have had an issue. But you didn't do that. So now this is happening. All right, anyway. So a recent post from Yoshi P, effectively Final Fantasy XIV's dad, reads like something he was really hoping to avoid having to write. I've seen numerous positive examples of games with fan-made mods that expand upon existing gameplay, and I personally see no reason to track down or investigate gamers for the general use of mods. However, it's important that their style of gameplay, i.e. mods, does not infringe upon others, and they do not negatively impact the core game, its services, or intended game design. It's not intended to be an orgy simulator. Anyway, he kind of pointed out a couple of different mod issues. We've kind of gone over them there, but it's effectively like, here's one player who did like the hard raids and the ultimate stuff and whatever. Sorry, that's later. Actually, this is more of a different one. Basically, if the player's mods are visible to the first player, are not visible to the first player, there's no issue. He doesn't care. And in general, Square Enix don't care. But once the mods are visible, it now becomes a problem for these particular scenarios. And the scenarios they're going into here, which is players using mods to obtain paid items, players using mods to generate character loods. So it's stuff like somebody going into doing the raid, you know, whatever, and they get the raid armor and they're showing it off and, hey, I look cool. And then somebody else is like, I don't want to actually have to do the raid, but I want the armor, so I'm just going to hack it into the game. I'm just going to get this mod that unlocks it and says I completed the raid, so I can have the raid armor. And it's like, if you want to do that after the raid period or after the seasonal period or whatever it is, it's a paid thing. And now, yeah, you can give them shit for saying you shouldn't be charging for that kind of stuff, fine. But they are charging for it, is the problem. So you're doing Square Enix out of money. You see the problem here? And Yoshida does kind of point this out. It's like, yes, these are paid optional items, and he's aware that people are not happy that like FOMO stuff is effectively behind a paywall. But he does point out, and again, this is the kind of excuse that a lot of developers give, which is like DLC or microtransactions help server upkeep and help pay for people in between big releases and stuff like that. And the rebuttal to that is, of course, Final Fantasy XIV is a subscription-based service. Surely the subscription should be paying for all of that. And then his rebuttal to that is the subscription price has been the same for a very long time, and they've never pushed it up. And inflation, etc., suggests that they maybe should put it up, and he doesn't want to. He wants to keep the subscription at that price. So these optional things are meant to be meant to help with the inflation side of things. Anyway, whether you agree with that or not, I don't know. But this last one is kind of hard to disagree with. Using mods to generate character lewds. So this is displaying them essentially naked. And if you have modded animations, you might be doing other things while they're naked. However, if the user posts a screenshot of their naked character publicly on social media, Final Fantasy XIV itself may be subject to legal measures by regulators in certain countries, because they'll see it as Final Fantasy XIV facilitating this kind of stuff. And we've already seen the UK Online Safety Act. We've already seen the Freedom Cry people trying to get all of the adult content taken down off Steam and so on. And Final Fantasy XIV don't want any of that. They don't want it. You don't want it. Everybody shut up, basically. And they go into it a little bit in the article about that. They don't call it out. Yoshida doesn't call it out, but it's quite clear that's what he's talking about. And then some of the feedback from that post is like, man's out here begging people to shut the fuck up. Too long didn't read, stop posting your character's dick on Twitter, and there's a lot of other things. So while, yeah, you kind of, congratulations, you played yourself. There are, as I pointed out, people who use that mod strictly just for the roleplay stuff, you know, so their character looks the way they want it to look, and they can have the animations that they want to have so that they can play their character the way they want to. They weren't doing anything offensive. They weren't doing anything that would undermine the game integrity-wise or anything like that. They're getting fucked over here. And I have seen a lot of people talking about how they're just not going to play the game if they can't do this anymore, which is a bit extreme. I mean, I do play a lot of, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPGs and what have you, and I don't look the way my character looks, and I don't have the clothes that my character's meant to have, etc., but I can still roleplay. Like, I get if it's something you've been doing for a long time and it's something that brought the community together and what have you, it sucks. I get that. But I would say just wait like a couple of months. Somebody else will make another will make another one of these apps and of one of these mods, and you know, this time people should shut the fuck up. Maybe don't post your dick on Twitter, you know? Anyway, we'll leave Shinobi to play. Anyway, that's your news for the 25th to the 31st of August, 2025. So some stuff out of the Mix Showcase looked pretty interesting. There were a lot of games, though, and definitely some of them got lost in this sheer volume of games. I think there's quite a few trailers that we were looking at there. I was like, I have no memory of this game. So that is obviously a problem with these really big showcases. It is one way, like a good thing is like there's so many indie games now. I say now, it's kind of been a thing for like at least since Unreal went free, or when Unity went free. And I've been thinking back to like PS2 era, PS3 era, that kind of thing. There were so few indie games, and it was largely just a access issue. You know, having like a development machine was largely what you needed for console, and getting indie games made, it was rare. It was pretty rare. But now the tools are just so much better that you can just get so many more indie games going, and that's great. That is, it's fantastic. It also has this problem of when you're trying to show them off, there's too many, really, for these showcases to really work. So that is one issue, and discoverability in general is a big problem on all of the platforms. Just finding games that you might be interested in that aren't, you know, paying out the nose for marketing is also a big problem. And it's, I guess in some ways it's a good problem to have because there's so many games, but you know, really good games are being lost in the just sheer volume of other games. Some of them maybe not so good and shouldn't be on the platform, but anyway, Silksonging, a lot of other games, like some of them have only been delayed a week, 2 weeks at most. Some of them have been delayed substantially. but also it's somewhat like some marketing for them as well. I was like, oh, another game has been delayed by Silksong. Here it is, and we hadn't been talking about it up until now. So there's an element of that to it, which is pretty good. Other things, probably. The situation in Microsoft, the many situations in Microsoft we've been talking about. Yes, the Palestine, the fact that they're aiding Israel and trying to say that they're not aiding Israel is very frustrating, and I'm sure it is extremely frustrating for people who work there and who have a conscientious objection, shall we say, to Microsoft using the revenue from their work. So there is a bit in that article where they're talking to people who work for Xbox and make games like specifically for Xbox and so on. So people who work at Bethesda, people who work at Arcane, people who work at Obsidian, those kind of things, thinking that they're working really hard to make these games. And if those games do well, they'll make a lot of revenue for Microsoft, and then Microsoft will turn around and use that revenue to help Israel bomb people. Like, extremely frustrating. Like, you have no say over what the money is used for. And that's true for pretty much every company, but I think usually people aren't expecting that the company they work for is also facilitating a genocide, you know? Like, there's a degrees of frustration here, I think. Well, like, that's not going to be fixed anytime soon. The King report, again, a lot of it is sources claim and anonymous people, and some of it's a bit conflicting, so we don't necessarily know how much of it is true, but it's certainly clear from a lot of that stuff in that article and other articles that it was a shit show, those layoffs. Like, they just laid off random people. In some cases, some of it was vindictive, revenge layoffs in some ways, or getting rid of difficult employees. Difficult being ethical employees, which again, more frustration, and it's the same company, so that's not great. Anyway, we're going to leave it there for this week. So thanks for watching. Thanks for keeping me company. Again, we are still in progress of getting games back on the channel. I'm just not finding the time to set stuff up. That's just it. I'm just not finding the time. I am hoping I will find some time soon. I will check under the cushions this time. I haven't checked that yet. Anyway, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.